When you're looking at HVAC systems for multi-residential properties, you really have two main options. One is, are you going to have a centralized system that runs the entire building, or are you going to have individual systems where the tenants can control their unit and you can have separate billing? We knew from the beginning that we wanted to have separate systems. That, of course, brings a whole set of challenges because you're thinking about space and where does the mechanical actually fit. The cheapest way to do it is to have little, small forced air furnaces in each unit. However, they take up more space and they have a lot of bigger, bulkier ductwork. So one of the things that was recommended to us was to consider a high velocity system that would run off an on-demand water boiler.
When you're implementing HVAC in a multi-unit, it seems relatively straightforward, but it's probably one of the mechanical elements that has the biggest amount of variables. One, it's in contention with the plumbing, which is fixed. It's in contention with the structural elements, which are not always something that we can go around. You know, you can't go through certain things. Sometimes you can't get away from bulkheads. All you can do is sort of minimize the aesthetic and maximize the output of the system.
When we started construction, one of the things that Andrew and I were doing is we engaged an acoustical engineer, and one of the things that they had continually been recommending was to go with a decoupled floor system, so like a sound membrane with a concrete topping. Although costs were rising, we had decided that that would be a really good investment because it's really hard to put that in after your project is all done.
So independently, the elements that create the radiant in-floor system didn't make sense, but once you guys came back with the sound attenuation requirements and the interest in the decoupled floor system, it all of a sudden made a lot of sense to pivot on the mechanical side and introduce a system that would essentially give them more of a consistent output of heat, a more comfortable space. The high velocity is great, but it has nothing on the consistency of the radiant. And because from a financial side, it was only going to be a marginal increase, it just was the most logical execution for the space.
So what we ended up with is a combo boiler per apartment that will service the in-floor heating as well as the domestic hot water, so your shower and your sinks and things like that. Each unit has its own gas stove as well as barbecue lines that have been ran outside, and we've done a rough-in for gas fireplaces in the future.
One of the considerations for HVAC is that there are elements that are within the dwelling, all your rough-ins, all of your mechanical systems in terms of your equipment, but there is also an element that's external that you need to factor into design. So your gas lines and your condenser lines for your air conditioning units and where you put the condensers. Normally we would put them on a wall and they would be out of sight, out of mind, but in this case, that wasn't an option.
Another design element that we wanted to keep in mind is that, of course, air conditioning units, make noise in the summer. We wanted them to be spread throughout the property, but also not be seen. And one of the other options that we had been given was we could put them up on the roof or in the balconies, but we didn't want to have the noise or the reverberation go between units.
We did really have to think closely on how we were going to do this to meet the sound attenuation, to meet the aesthetic of the envelope, to meet the aesthetic of the interior, and to meet the code requirements that we're bound to.
Stay tuned for our next video as Christina and I talk about electrical and implications of a multi-residential complex, as well as what's next for our Rhodes project now that all of our rough-in mechanicals have passed inspection. We're really excited to share this journey with everybody, so please follow along and watch the different phases as we complete this really exciting project.